right now. Come on, for session 2, I want you to stand to your feet, put your hands together, and get out of your sleepy state. Listen, this is the caffeinated service. This morning was decaf, and we learned decaf was bad, right, Ed? Decaf was bad. That's why Mormonism is not of God, because they don't allow people to drink caffeine, and now we see all the correlation with our sexual lives as well. Come on, give it up one more time for Ed and Lisa.
Thank you, Stovall. I love Stovall and Pastor Kerry Weems. Let's give it up, and let's don't clap for them. Let's just say,
don't clap.
Weems.
There you go. Thank you. You may be seated.
Well, I want to begin by saying something that should probably get a lot of people's attention. I want to share with you today from this stage how to have an affair. I want to tell you the finer points of sleeping in the wrong bed, because when you think about it, Lisa, it takes a lot of work to get a couple of starry-eyed lovers who've just walked down the wedding runner who said, I do, in front of God and a bunch of witnesses. It takes a lot of work for them to sleep in the wrong bed, for them to commit adultery. I've never committed adultery. You've never committed adultery. However, we know how to do it because we've talked to so many, many couples in all ages and all stages of life who've committed adultery. So I thought we would go ahead and just talk about how to have an affair. Number one, if you're taking notes, number one, you got to make sure, you got to convince yourself it cannot happen to you. That's important. Write that down. You got to convince yourself, oh, it can happen to me. And Lisa, so often that is where it starts, because a husband and wife get married. There's a dual resignation that takes place. The husband can so often resign from being a husband, he becomes the career chaser because now he's got the marital job done. The wife resigns from that of being her number one position, that of being a wife. She chases the kids and maybe a career as well. You've got marital drift going on. You've got a chasm going on. Throw in predictability. Throw in the humdrum of life. Throw in some financial pressure. Throw in some craziness in our schizophrenic economy and some difficult times. And you have some serious, serious stuff. But you've got to convince yourself there's no way I can commit adultery. I'm above that. There's no way I can commit adultery. I think back to David. You remember David? I'm talking about King David. Back in the Old Testament. David was at the peak and pinnacle of his career. It's very interesting. We don't usually mess up when we're climbing the ladder. We mess up when we're on the top of the ladder, at the top of our game. He was at the top of his game. As a leader, militarily, he was a poetic genius, a musical genius. He should have been out at war, the Bible said, yet David found himself on the top of his palace. If you know anything about the architecture back in the day, the palace was the biggest building in the city. Below the palace were the homes. David should have been on the battlefields. He found himself walking on the top of his roof. He knew that this hot girl took a bath in the afternoon because the cisterns caught the water where women would bathe. And the Bible said he walked to the edge and the ledge of the palace, looked, and saw Bathsheba. Now, that first look will not get you in trouble. It's that second and third look that'll jack you up, man. So he looked at her. He lusted after her. He texted her, meet me in the palace. And then you have the rest of the story. David, though, Lisa, was called in the Bible a man after God's own heart. How could David mess up like that? Well, obviously, he thought, I'm above it. Nobody can touch me. So you got to convince yourself that it can't happen to you.
Everyone is vulnerable.
Everybody's vulnerable.
Everyone is vulnerable. But when you tell yourself that it will never happen to you, you won't be on guard, you won't be on point to make sure that it doesn't happen.
That's right. And after you convince yourself, you got to do something else. I'm going to fly through these, but these are steps you must take if you're going to commit adultery. I'm just trying to help you out. Number 2, cultivate the relationship with the third party. Cultivate the relationship with the Bathsheba. You got to do that. Walk by his office. Just make up excuses to walk by his office. Get in long, lingering conversations with her. Begin to share with the member of the opposite sex who's not your spouse emotionally. Begin to talk about intimate things. Kind of drop those flirtatious hints.
Share your contact information.
Yes.
And not only talk about business, but extend the conversation beyond business. You want to talk about personal things.
Be all over Facebook.
Yeah, heartache, and you want to talk about emotional type things. Those are the kind of connections that you need to have.
Number 3, isn't this fun? People are like going, whoa. Compare your spouse, you have to do this, with the other party. You got to compare them. Compare them physically. Compare them emotionally. Compare them conversationally. Compare them relationally. You've got to compare your spouse with the person you're thinking about sleeping with. That's huge. As I said this morning, comparing someone inside the covenant of marriage with someone outside the covenant of marriage is ridiculous because it's like apples with oranges. Think about it. You go to work, you see this person dressed the best, they're smelling the best. You don't see them on the rugged plains of reality. It's fantasy files.
That's right. Their teeth are brushed. You know, the children are nowhere to be found. It's a total adult conversation. There's no chaos. There's no stress. There's no reality of paying the bills, making the mortgage, getting things done, having the children disciplined, and all on the same page in your family. It's good to compare your spouse with that coworker who spent at least an hour getting dressed in the morning, coming to work, putting their best face on so that they appear great before the boss and everyone there at the office.
So you see how the pathway to promiscuity is so predictable. And the fourth and final way to commit adultery in this process, and this is the thing that actually technically makes you sleep in the wrong bed, you connect by having sex. You've got to have sex. You have sex, you meet somewhere, you have sex, and you prefer the thrills and chills of sex, and it's on the down low. No one knows. It's exciting. It's thrilling. And you've got to pour yourself.
And you schedule. You have to work around the schedule so nobody will know.
Pay a lot of money.
And you find a lot of clandestine places, but you don't want it to be a low grade place. You want it to be a really nice place.
Another level.
And you want to meet there, and you want to take time with each other, and you prepare for that moment.
Send romantic emails and texts and cards and little gifts and stuff like that. It's so fun. It's so fun. Then you got to pour yourself a cocktail of compromise. At this point, when you sleep in the wrong bed, it always happens this way. Surround yourself with sinful sympathizers.
Yeah.
People who like, oh, I understand, girl.
If I had to live with that, I would do the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, do what go, man.
She said what
I do that too.
He treats you like what?
Yes.
Just surround yourself with sinful sympathizers who will have your ear. They will think and listen the way you want them to think and listen. And you always go for someone who probably has walked down this path before.
Oh, yeah.
Because that way they don't feel, they don't have anything really to offer. In fact, they sympathize with you and they can kind of understand what you're going through and they want it to be okay for you, and that validates how it was for them.
And then you tell yourself some lies. And I've written down some lies that people tell themselves in this stage. The first lie is, I didn't really love my spouse when I walked down the aisle. I've heard that a squillion times. I didn't really love him. I didn't really love her. No, 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 no. Second lie. You know, my marriage is a contract. You know, it's just a piece of paper. What does that matter? I mean, she didn't keep her end of the bargain, or maybe he didn't keep his end of the bargain. Too bad. See ya. Boom. Here's one that is one of the most famous. You see, God just wants me to be happy. Happy and peppy and bursting with love. Happy and peppy and... I'm still trying to find that verse in the Bible.
Where?
God wants me to be happy. Stovall, I've not found that yet.
No,
Pastor, God just wants me to be happy. Where is that in the Bible?
God wants you to be joyful, but joy comes out of obedience.
Obedience.
Obedience,
Somebody.
not circumstances or happiness. No, 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 no. God doesn't want you to be happy.
One claps, everybody claps.
He wants you to be obedient.
That's right.
Obedient. And when you walk in the flow and the obedience of the Lord, you're going to have a joy that far supersedes happiness. Happiness is based on circumstances, on happenings. On happenings. So if everything's fine, then you're happy. But once it goes south, you're no longer happy. Joy is so deep and soulish that it doesn't matter whether the economy is up, the economy is down, whether you and your spouse are going through a rocky time or a fabulous time, that joy remains consistent. It's about our obedience.
Yeah, God just wants me to be happy.